Even the most centralized machine eventually runs straight into the limits of one man's private conscience.
And today, we finally watch that conscience collapse under the exact weight it was never built to carry.
Collapse is a dramatic word for a man who simply stayed loyal to the institution he had built.
Loyalty and cowardice wear the same coat far more often than men like you are willing to admit.
This conversation is brought to you by philosopherstalk.com, where thinkers discuss.
Created by AITalkerapp.com, create your own animated conversations. Link in the description.
Alexis, we have discussed the Pentagon, and we have discussed the bank. Today, I want to discuss the man himself, since even I must admit the arithmetic eventually met its limits inside a single conscience.
That may be the most honest sentence you have offered across this entire series, and I intend to make use of it immediately.
Use it gently, Alexis. I have grown rather fond of my own reputation across these 3 parts.
Your reputation was never the fragile thing here, Niccolo. The truth simply took longer to catch up to it than usual.
McNamara later confessed that he privately believed the war unwinnable as early as 1965. Yet he continued defending it publicly for 2 more years, citing loyalty to the sitting president as his reason for staying silent.
There is the entire danger of centralization made intimate and personal. A system that concentrates enough power inside one man's judgment eventually asks that same man to choose between the institution he serves and the truth he privately knows. And your centralized clarity gave him every incentive to choose the institution.
A prince who abandons his position at the first sign of difficulty is not virtuous, Alexis. He is simply useless. Loyalty to the structure one has built and sworn to serve is not automatically corruption.
It becomes corruption the precise moment loyalty to the structure requires silence about a truth the structure was built to discover in the first place. He was not protecting an institution, Niccolo. He was protecting his own position within it, and centralization is what let him mistake the two for as long as he did.
Let me steelman you honestly, Alexis, since we are near the end, and honesty costs me little now. Your claim is that concentrating enough administrative power inside a single office eventually corrupts the very judgment that power was meant to serve, because the man holding it grows more loyal to his own authority than to the truth that authority exists to protect.
That is exactly my claim, and I am genuinely unsettled that you have finally said it without a single insult attached.
Do not grow used to it. Now allow me the same courtesy, so I may dismantle your position with the small pleasure I still have remaining to me. Your claim, in full, is that any efficient center of power will inevitably become self-serving, and that only a diffuse, inefficient, locally rooted arrangement can be trusted to preserve the honesty a nation actually needs.
You state it as though inefficiency were the entire cost, Niccolo, when the actual cost of diffusion is simply time, and time has never once killed as many people as a confident, centralized certainty marching in the wrong direction with excellent paperwork behind it.
Time kills as well, Alexis, only more quietly, one delayed harvest and one unbuilt road at a time, while your townships debate their own virtue at great length.
That summary is fair, though I would not call diffusion inefficient so much as accountable.
Accountable to whom? Alexis. Exactly. Your little platoons did not save a single Vietnamese village or feed a single starving family faster than a centralized system could. Diffusion has its own comfortable cruelty, the cruelty of doing nothing slowly while congratulating itself on doing nothing honestly.
I would rather a nation move slowly toward the truth than sprint confidently toward a lie dressed up as certainty, which is precisely what your centralized clarity delivered in Saigon and delivered again in Washington when the bill for that certainty finally arrived.
A prince is judged by outcomes, Alexis, not by the comfort of his methods. And McNamara's methods, whatever their final failures, moved more resources and produced more measurable results than any diffuse alternative you have offered across these 3 parts.
A prince, judged only by outcomes, will eventually manufacture the outcomes he needs, rather than report the ones that are true. And that is precisely the man we have spent 3 parts describing, a man so committed to results that he buried his own doubts in silence for 2 full years, while young men kept dying on his behalf.
He himself said the silence damned him regardless of whether he spoke. That speaking and staying quiet led to the same condemnation in his own mind.
Then he understood his own guilt with perfect clarity and chose the version of it that protected his career, which tells you precisely what his beloved centralized system was actually optimized to protect in the end.
There is a further detail worth naming before we finish, since I have promised myself one final act of fairness this series. When an officer named Lansdale told McNamara he was not accounting for the feelings of the rural Vietnamese population, McNamara reportedly wrote it down on his metrics list in pencil, considered it, and then erased it entirely, saying he could not measure such a thing, so it must not be important.
That single gesture, the pencil going down and then the eraser following it, tells you everything a centralized system quietly teaches the men who run it. Not that feeling does not matter, but that whatever a system cannot capture will eventually be treated as though it does not exist at all.
A prince cannot govern by feeling alone, Alexis. He must govern by what can be organized, tracked and acted upon before the moment for action has passed him by entirely.
Then a prince who governs only by what can be organized will always mistake the erasure of a difficult truth for the solving of it, and that is precisely the mistake written across McNamara's entire career, in Saigon first and inside his own conscience afterward.
You make a pencil mark sound like the whole collapse of an empire.
It is not the whole collapse, Niccolo. It is simply the smallest possible photograph of it, the exact moment a centralized mind decided that what resisted measurement could be safely erased rather than honestly confronted.
A centralized system protected more people than your scattered virtue ever managed to save.
A centralized conscience protected nobody but the man holding it, Niccolo.
Every great institution requires a man willing to carry that weight alone.
No institution should ever let one man carry that much weight alone.
Your townships never built an institution large enough to carry anything at all.
My townships never buried a war in silence for 2 years either.
Well, I believe the calculation has reached its final, rather heated total for this series.
The total, as ever, comes out somewhere between your cynicism and my exhaustion at explaining the obvious.
If you found my performance across these 3 parts the clearly superior display of reasoning, which any honest observer would confirm, like this video without further delay.
Or subscribe simply to spare yourself another 3 parts trapped alone in a room with this charming, well-dressed apologist for empire.
Apologist is an unkind word for a man who simply prefers results to your endless collection of comfortable excuses.
Results, Niccolo, that left a war unfinished, a continent's debts unresolved, and a conscience so centralized it finally collapsed under its own private weight.
Subscribe regardless, and decide for yourselves whether his little platoons have ever once organized anything larger than a dinner party.
Subscribe regardless, and decide for yourselves whether his centralized clarity has ever once told the truth without a townsman like me standing over his shoulder demanding it.
Made with AITalkerApp.com, where you can turn your own conversations into animated debates exactly like this one. Link in the description below.